I've always been a huge Dragon Ball Z fan. As a kid, I spent hours watching Goku fight Frieza, Cell, and Majin Buu. But what I loved the most was playing DBZ games on my old Super Nintendo. One afternoon, while wandering through a flea market in a sketchy part of town, I stumbled across something weird. A black SNES cartridge with no label. It had no artwork, no markings, nothing, except for some faint, scratched-out text on the back. DBZ, Final Bout. That didn't make sense. Final Bout was a PlayStation game, not SNES. I picked it up and turned to the old man behind the stall. He was thin, with deep wrinkles and tired eyes. "How much for this one?" I asked. He glanced at the cartridge, and for a moment, I swear I saw something like hesitation in his face. "You sure you want that, kid?" His voice was rough, almost uneasy. I laughed. "Yeah, why not? It's DBZ, right?" The man sighed, rubbing his temples. "Fine, $5. I handed him the money, but just as I was turning away, I heard him mutter under his breath, "Just don't play too long." I stopped. "What?" But he just waved me off, already turning to the next customer. Something about his tone stuck with me all the way home. It was probably just some old man trying to mess with me, right? That night, as soon as I got the chance, I plugged the cartridge into my SNES. The screen flickered a little, but then the title screen appeared, except it was just text on a pitch-black background. Dragon Ball Z, Final Bout. There was no music, no Goku, no flashy intro, just those words staring back at me. I pressed start. As soon as I pressed start, the screen faded to black. For a moment, I thought the game had crashed, but then white text appeared. Continue. There were two options, yes and no. That was weird. There was no character selection, no intro, nothing. Just this. I chose yes. The screen cut to a battle stage, one I recognized immediately. It was the Rocky Wasteland, where Goku fought Vegeta for the first time. The graphics looked off, like an unfinished beta version. The colors were duller, and the background seemed too empty. Then, I saw my character, Goku. But something was wrong. He was standing completely still, facing forward, as if waiting for something. His sprite was different. His GI looked darker, almost burnt, and his eyes were hollow, just empty, black voids. There was no music, just a faint, almost inaudible static. My opponent appeared, Vegeta, but not the one I knew. His armor was cracked, his skin was paler, and his expression, he wasn't scowling or smirking like usual. He looked tired. I tried moving Goku, but he wouldn't respond. The controller felt like it was lagging. The only thing I could do was press A. So I did. Goku suddenly dashed forward, on his own. I didn't even touch the D-pad. He punched Vegeta in the stomach so hard that the screen shook violently. Then Vegeta screamed. Not a normal, digitized SNES scream. This was raw, distorted, like actual pain. His sprite flickered, and something started dripping from his mouth. At first, I thought it was just bad pixelation, but the longer I stared, the clearer it became. It looked like blood. I didn't press anything. Goku just stood there while Vegeta collapsed to his knees, coughing. Then the screen glitched. It was subtle at first, static lines running across the image. Then the background started warping, like the game was breaking apart. Vegeta's sprite twitched, his eyes widening. And then, for just a second, I swear I saw something else. Something standing behind Goku. Tall, dark, watching. Then the screen went completely black. No sound, no response, just darkness. Then, white. Text appeared again. "You should not have come back." I sat there, controller in hand, my heart pounding. Then the screen flashed once, and the game restarted on its own. The title screen reappeared, just like before. Black background, white text, Dragon Ball Z, Final Bout. But this time, something was different. There was no option to start, no press start prompt. The only thing on the screen was Goku, standing in the middle. His sprite looked damaged. His GI was torn, his arms were limp, and his face, those black hollow eyes, looked straight at me. I pressed every button, but nothing worked. The game wasn't frozen though. The background had a subtle flicker, like an old VHS tape barely holding together. Then, after what felt like forever, the screen cut to another battle. It wasn't Vegeta this time, it was Piccolo. But he looked wrong. His body was hunched over, shaking slightly, as if struggling to stay upright. His face was shadowed, his mouth slightly open. The worst part, his arms were gone. I gripped the controller tighter. This wasn't normal. This wasn't a glitch. Someone had designed the game to be like this. The match started without any announcer or music, just silence. I tried moving Goku, but again he acted on his own. He walked, not ran, toward Piccolo, slow and deliberate. Piccolo didn't move. He just stood there trembling. His breathing was loud, too loud, like it was coming from inside my room. Then Goku punched. The moment his fist connected, the screen glitched violently. Pixelated static, flashing images, distorted colors. Piccolo didn't scream. Instead, his body split apart. Not like in the anime, where he regenerates. This was brutal. His torso separated from his legs, and his head lolled to the side unnaturally. The game wasn't holding back. I was frozen, staring at the screen. Goku just stood over Piccolo's broken body. Then, a whisper. Not from the TV, from behind me. "You're next." I spun around. My room was empty, but my reflection in the dark window, I swear I saw something standing behind me. I didn't want to turn back to the screen. My hands were clammy, my breath shallow. That whisper, "You're next." It wasn't in my head. It wasn't from the game. It was real. But when I forced myself to look back at the TV, the game had changed. Again, the battlefield was gone. Instead, Goku stood in an empty black void, alone. The screen flickered and white text appeared, letter by letter, as if something was typing it directly onto my screen. "Do you remember?" I hesitated. "Remember what?" The text vanished. Another line replaced it. "You were there." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. Another message. "You watched them suffer." I didn't understand. Was this a reference to something in Dragon Ball Z? A hidden storyline? Some obscure lore I had never heard of? Then, without warning, an image flashed on the screen. I barely saw it. It was only there for a split second, but it was enough. A face. Twisted. Hollow-eyed. Smiling. And then, the game resumed. A new opponent stood before Goku. Gohan. But he was just a child. The version from early DBZ, with his small frame and bowl-cut hair. He wore his classic purple G, but something was off. His skin was grey. His eyes were missing. I tried pressing pause. Nothing happened. The controller wasn't responding. Goku, still acting on his own, slowly approached the boy. Gohan didn't move. He just stood there, staring. No, facing. Goku, with those empty sockets. Then, Goku raised his hand. A single key, blast formed in his palm. I wanted to scream, "Stop!" But there was nothing I could do. The blast fired. The screen exploded into static. A high-pitched screeching noise filled my speakers, so loud I had to cover my ears. It wasn't a normal game sound. It was distorted, unnatural, like a mix of radio static and an animal screaming. Then, silence. The screen was black again. White text appeared. He didn't have to die. I felt sick. I wanted to turn the game off. But the console wouldn't shut down, even when I unplugged it. The screen stayed on. The game wasn't off. The screen was still on, still showing that same black void. My console was unplugged, but the game remained. That shouldn't be possible. single line of white text appeared. "You can't escape." My hands were trembling as I grabbed the controller again. I didn't even remember picking it up, but somehow it was in my grip. The game continued. Goku was alone in the void, staring straight ahead, but this time I could control him. Slowly, I moved him forward. The screen scrolled endlessly, just blackness, stretching on forever. But after what felt like minutes, something appeared. A figure. At first, it was just a silhouette, but as I got closer, I saw it clearly. It was me, or at least something that looked like me. The sprite had my exact clothes, the same hoodie I was wearing right now, the same messy hair, but its face was wrong. Hollow black eyes, a twisted grin. It stood still, completely motionless. Then the game forced Goku to stop walking. White text appeared. "You did this." I didn't understand. What did I do? Another message. "You let them die." Suddenly the screen glitched violently. The background turned red. The static returned, louder than before, distorting the screen into a mess of pixels. Then flashes of real images. At first, I couldn't tell what they were, but as the distortion lessened, I saw them clearly. Pictures of my childhood. Old photographs, me as a kid, smiling, playing, watching TV. Then, one image stayed on the screen. It was an old photo of me and my childhood friend. I hadn't thought about him in years. We used to play Dragon Ball Z, Final Bout, together all the time. I suddenly remembered how we'd argue over who got to be Goku, how we'd stay up late trying to beat the hardest fights. But then, I remembered something else. The last time we played together, the day of the accident. My chest tightened, my breathing became ragged. That was the day I clenched the controller, my vision blurring. The game was trying to make me remember. Goku's sprite began to distort, his body twisting unnaturally, his face warping into something inhuman. His mouth opened wide, too wide, stretching into an unnatural, gaping grin. Then, the game spoke. Not in text. A voice. It came from the speakers, but it sounded real, like someone standing right next to me. "You left me behind." I threw the controller away. The screen cut to black. Silence. For a long time, nothing happened. My heart pounded in my chest, my mind racing, my entire body frozen in fear. Then, the game shut itself off. This time, for real. The TV screen was dead. My console was still unplugged. I sat there shaking, trying to process what just happened. I never turned that game on again. And the worst part? When I checked my old photo albums later that night, I couldn't find a single picture of my childhood friend, like he never existed at all.